Hello and welcome back to Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, where today we're going to be fighting another one of my favorite monsters. And this time you'll note we're not in the guild hall, and there's a reason for that, and I'm sure you can probably guess the reason if you know the fact that there's a reason and also know what monsters are in this game. But yes, let's go see what it is, shall we? Well, I guess the title of the quest tells you everything you need to know. This is actually a rather interesting case, because had you asked me prior to the release of Monster Hunter 4G, I would have told you that I thought Monoblos was an inferior version of Diablos. And I would have told you that it didn't look as good, and that it was just a bad monster. And yet my opinion of this thing changed Really, another roar? Yeah, my opinion of this thing changed completely when it actually got updated for Monster Hunter 4G. Specifically because they managed to differentiate it from Diablos, which is something it sorely needed. It doesn't burrow as much as Diablos, but as you can see, it still burrows. It's much more content to actually use attacks from on top of the ground instead of under the sand, which keeps it interesting. I actually do really like that single horn. It's nice and iconic. And just generally the fact that they brought it up to the 3rd gen and onward standards by beefing the thing up. So, I mean, if you go back and look at a Monoblos or a Rathian or a Diablos or really anything on the traditional Flying Wyvern chassis that isn't Gravios or Basarios in the 2nd gen or earlier games, they look emaciated. But once we got to try, the Wraths and Diablos really got a huge upgrade to their looks. Like, instead of looking like they haven't eaten anything in weeks, they actually are big, bulky, intimidating. They look like they've got a lot of power behind their muscles instead of just a lot of nothing. Which I personally really enjoy. And when they gave Monoblos that upgrade, I was blown away. Couple that with its fighting style, which I personally find more fun than the Diablos' due to it spending more time above the sand. And you've got a monster that I no longer view as the inferior version. So yeah, Monoblos. It's pretty neat. And this music we're listening to is technically Monoblos' theme. The Dunes fight music is named for Monoblos. Though I'm not a huge fan of it as far as themes in this game go. But I mean, the monster's cool. Yeah. Also, there's white Monoblos, which is definitely a thing. I specifically chose to fight regular Monoblos here because I personally prefer how it looks. But white Monoblos is also a fun fight. And I find it interesting that Apex Diablos, in order to make it harder, they gave it moves from white Monoblos' move pool. Which just goes to show that Monoblos is actually the superior Blos. Which, again, I wouldn't have said a mere 2 generations ago. Because back then, Monoblos and Diablos were too samey, and I thought that Diablos was more interesting. But I have since come around on that. It's always interesting how sometimes a monster that you used to hate, or at least used to be completely uninterested in, can become one of your favorites. Like, all it took was some redesigning, and Monoblos became pretty great in my eyes. And I'm actually glad... Really? I should use potions from farther away. But yeah, I'm actually really glad that the developers for the Monster Hunter series are willing to do updates and redesigns like these. Because honestly, if they had just gone the Kutku route and pretty much left it just as it was, I would have thought Monoblos was stupid and really stuck out after they updated Diablos for Tri. Because if they left Monoblos emaciated while Diablos got all beefed out, well, that would have been silly. Also, the fact that you can carve Diablos tailcase pluses from Monoblos tails is a little silly. I know where it came from, and I feel like it was mostly just entering data in a spreadsheet. That's how I feel. I don't know whether or not that's actually how it was. Because the thing is, in Japan, the monster parts all use the monster's titles rather than their names. So, for example, that thing that we just got would be a Horned Wyvern tailcase. And whose title is Horned Wyvern? It's Diablos. But then Monoblos' title is One Horned Wyvern. So it's still got Horned Wyvern in there, which means that Horned Wyvern tailcase is still perfectly fitting for a Monoblos. Because, again, it's still a Horned Wyvern. It's just a One-Horned Wyvern. And I feel like if they were just looking at the name and not the context, it would be really easy to get just, oh yeah, that's a Diablos tailcase. But this isn't a Diablos. So this is one of those cases where the context matters, like, quite a bit. It's the same way with carving, I believe it's Renoplos bones from Apsaros and Slagtoth. But in that case, it's just because it was, like, herbivore bone. So, you know, there's things like that that happen. I feel like it could certainly be improved. It's certainly not detrimental to gameplay as is, but yeah, it's a thing. That was a nice quick Monoblos. Oh, hey. Also, since you can only fight Monoblos solo, they decided... Ooh, we got a heart. Since you can only fight it solo, they decided to make it so that you get one extra carve from both the tail and the body. Just so that it's easier to farm up Monoblos parts, I guess. It's a thing. I actually kind of like that story. You see, I think it was the Jumbo Chief? Or maybe it was the Kokodo Chief. But one of the chiefs of one of the classic villages was fighting a Diablos, or not a Diablos, a Monoblos. And it basically, it killed his wife. And ever since then, as a superstition, basically, hunters have been tackling Monobloses alone, solo. Because that way they don't gotta worry about losing anyone dear to them or anything. So it's a kind of neat excuse for why we don't bring friends to fight Monobloses. But yeah. That's pretty much all I have for Monoblos. I mean, I could go fight a white Monoblos and it would probably be over in a similar amount of time, but nah, I feel like this is good. So, yeah. That's gonna be it for this episode. Join us next time when we fight another one of my favorite monsters, though it may or may not be in this game, because we're actually running out of my favorite monsters in this game. Yeah, let's see here. If I see anything that excites me, I'll give a shout. Yeah, not really much interesting yet. I mean, there is one other monster that I am pretty interested in this game. But I may or may not end up fighting it here, because there are some monsters in Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate that I rather enjoy and would love to fight. Also, like, I do love GOG, but I feel like there's no way I could top the last episode I did with GOG in it. So I'm just going to let that stand for itself. If you want to see GOG and hear me talking about how I love it and learn why I love it now even more than I did back then, go watch the episode of my Red Run Challenge for 4U that has GOG in it. Seriously, that, to this day, is the single best gaming experience I've ever had. I had a great time doing that quest, and I'll just let it stand on its own. But yep, that's it for this episode. Join us next time when we fight another of my favorite monsters. See you then, friends.